Welcome to Yorick's TV show, where science meets daily life. In this episode, to unlock the secrets of human potential. In today's episode, we dive into the world of peptides with none other than Dean Henry from dnlabresearch.com. Pioneer in peptides. Peptides may sound like just another buzzword in the sprawling universe of biohacking, but today we uncover these tiny peptides and are revolutionizing our approach to health and longevity. Imagine having the power to tweak your body's biological processes to not just enhance performance, but to rewind the aging clock. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, right? Well, stick around, because what Dean is about to tell you could dramatically change how we think about our health, aging, and human capabilities. Don't forget to subscribe so that you stay tuned on all the other episodes, and let me know what you think about this episode in the comments. Morning, Dean. The second time, but we're finally good to go. Happy to talk to you today.
Good morning, Yorick. Thank you for having me once again.
Yes, of course. Maybe it's even more fun to talk to you today after I met you on the Biohacker Meetup last weekend. So maybe it had to happen like this.
Everything for a reason. Great event, by the way. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Happy you were there. It was kind of different this time. We did it more like an interview, as you saw. Usually it's more like a keynote. But yeah, happy to have you there, and happy to have you on the show today. We were on the Biohacker Meetup, and I know that biohacking is some kind of a buzzword these days. It has not really good connotation because you have a lot of charlatans in this industry. But what it means to me is a slight more curiosity than average for all the processes in your body, and taking a little bit more control over those processes, and experimenting versus scientific research, combining that a little bit. So I'm always curious when somebody is into optimizing their health. There must be a reason for them to start. And it's usually not a really good reason per se. So I'm curious, how did you get into health optimization?
Yeah, it's a great point, actually. I think, I was always into sport growing up. I had quite a bad knee injury that actually stopped me playing sport at a good level. It was football, soccer, and I was also a sprinter. And then really I just went for I was 16. I was very young to stop playing football. So I had 4 or 5 knee surgeries that didn't work. So then I was even offered a semi-professional contract a couple of years after, I injured. So it was still there, but I just couldn't do it. My knee just kept collapsing. So then, I used to say I went off the rails. I just went out and had a bit of fun like all teenagers. It's just because I couldn't do sport anymore, really. But for the whole time, I was always exercising, I was always lifting weights, always doing any training I could do. My dad was a professional bodybuilder. My uncle was actually Mr. Universe. So I had this sort of in this in the genetics, if you like. And then really, it wasn't until my 15-year-old daughter was born 15 years ago. 15 and a half years ago. And she was born with a nut allergy, or they said she was born with a nut allergy. And actually, prior to that, even though I didn't connect the dots at the time, I used to have a disease where I couldn't swallow food from about the age of 17. And the only way that they could cure this disease, if you like, was to, and it wasn't a cure, it was to put a balloon down my esophagus blindly, and then expand the balloon so it expanded my esophagus, which then would allow me to swallow food. But they said if it was to go wrong, it's quite high risk because they are working blindly. They could overexpand it, means it would split open, then they would need to cut me open and do surgery. Wow. So every meal, sort of halfway through a meal, I'd need to run away and regurgitate, and it just got worse as the years went on. And when I spoke to the professionals, they said, well, why have I got this? They said, don't know. And they said, after we do the procedure, it will definitely come back within 5 years. I'm like, okay, risk reward, you know. And I mean, I love food like as much as the next man. So, and then my daughter was born with a nut allergy. So, you know, the knee operation, the mistakes they made, it just happens. The esophagus closing up, we don't know why, it just happens. Your daughter born with a nut allergy, it just happens. This is and really. So I went for the procedure on my esophagus when my daughter was born. Around this time, we just started investigating gut health. I found some Chinese medicine gurus and some other people that worked with famous sports people. I've really started getting into gut health and starting to understand mindfulness and meditation and stress responses. And actually, it's a stress response. You know, when I think back now, I couldn't play football anymore. I couldn't do the sport that I loved. My mum and dad were going for a divorce at the time. You know, as a 15, 16-year-old, outwardly, I'm thinking everything's fine, but inwardly, there's stuff going on, right? So it's some sort of trauma. So I had that procedure done that would only last maximum 5 years. And that was 15 years ago, and it never came back. And I put that down to understanding that, you know, almost everything is a stress response or a trigger to a stress response.
Wow, that is quite a background and quite a history in your health, and it confirms my belief of somebody who wants to optimize usually comes from a worse background. So how great that you overcame all of this health adversity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I noticed it was the even though I had the personal thing going on, it was really understanding allergies because my daughter had one. We have 4 children, and one of them has an allergy, and it's just, you know, we had to try and add it all up and just learn so much about gut health and strength. So really, just to help our daughter was the real boost, you know, to really take it seriously.
Can imagine you can suffer yourself, but when it happens to your children, I believe that has a different impact, right?
For sure.
But how did you make the connection from gut health? Of course, gut health is one of the most important factors in our health. From health to peptides.
I think supplementation. Okay, so peptides is a little bit overcomplicated. We obviously will delve a little deeper into it, but it was really just trying to, you know, listening to podcasts, doing my studies, doing my research, trying to find the best supplements. And I did a podcast previously, and I said I've been into peptides for more than a decade, and my wife listened to it and said, "No, you haven't." I was like, so I did the numbers, and it's around 8 to 9 years. So she was just under a decade. And around 8 to 9 years ago, I stumbled on a podcast, and they was talking about epitolon or epithyolon, which is the Russian-derived peptide that is the most famous for anti-aging, actually reversing your telomeres, right? So unbelievable. And then once I heard about it, I said, I have to get me some epitolon because it's the ultimate longevity peptide. So, and really from there, delved very deeply into peptides, realized that more than 90% of the market is not good. Lots of online people selling. And I just thought there must be a way with the network that I started to grow that I can find a good source of epitolon. And ultimately, I did.
Well, luckily you did, because I think it's also a great tool. I see there's a tool indeed. Maybe we should dive more into that later. But before we dive into peptides more, you also are into bioregulators. I know you explained this already a lot, but for the listener that doesn't know yet, the difference between bioregulators and peptides. Could you explain?
Okay. So peptides and peptide bioregulators are both peptides. Peptides, as we will be discussing today, research peptides or therapeutic peptides. A peptide is an amino acid which is two amino acids bonded together up until 50 amino acids bonded together. Depends who you speak to. Some people say it's 55, 60, but generally it turns into a polypeptide and a protein after 50. Peptide bioregulators is a subcategory of peptides. Now, peptide bioregulators are generally 2 to 4 amino acids. So they don't go any longer than that. and they're nano in size. And what happens with peptide bioregulators, they do what they say on the tin. They regulate your biology. So they regulate the target area. They bring in balance. So they work with, or they target DNA. Peptides target receptors. So there's a slight difference there. That's a very basic overview on the difference between the two. Yeah.
And because I looked at your website extensively, dnlabresearch, if I pronounce it correctly, right? And you sell both. How would you recommend getting into peptide bioregulators and peptides for someone who has never experienced something like that before, who's never used it? What would you recommend taking the first step?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because most people come to me with an issue or an objective they'd like to address. I don't proactively look for people to sell them peptides, right? So that's not really how it works. But it is, it's still a preventative, but it's a supplement for prevention, but can also help with issues. If I was to approach someone who was starting from scratch, I would say, so we're like machines, right? Humans are machines. A machine is only as strong as its weakest point. So I would say to you, what is your weakest point? And generally, unfortunately, most people will come up with something, even if it's like, I get brain fog, or, I really want to focus on cognitive performance. I'm a high flyer and I just can't focus. I keep forgetting things. And that's very popular at the moment. Or for like me, I've got injuries, or sports people want to perform better. And then it goes to the next level as, people I'm perfect. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm absolutely good. I don't need peptides. Okay. So what about your family? What about genetics, history? Is there any heart disease or similar in the family? So, and then, eventually we will find a point where we need to start. But as I say, that conversation is very rare because people normally come to me with something they want to address.
Interesting. So, but how, I have to ask some questions like devil's advocate, but I'm with you because full transparency, I'm using BPC 157 right now for the listener, the camera. I have a different camera over here, so that's why I'm pointing.
Okay.
BPC 157, I think I'm in week 3 at the moment. Okay. It's hard to tell the difference, but I think my body feels more stable from a gut perspective, and I feel like that also has a cognitive impact as well. Not quite sure because obviously I have to experience the full dose, and I'm not even halfway, so maybe it's just placebo at this point. Could also be, but how much is treatment? Is it a treatment, or is it more like, it feels like a treatment because I do it so intentionally, but do you call it a treatment?
It's therapeutic.
Therapeutic.
It's therapy. Yeah, it's peptide therapy, we call it. And I like how you have articulated it, because there's a little bit of confusion. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a few sort of misunderstandings with peptides, and we could speak for hours, but I think number one is that, the peptides we're talking about now, the therapeutic peptides, it's an injectable form. So there's a real stigma around needles and injections just because it's how it's been, I don't know, it's almost been baked into the fabric of society that needles are bad, right? So it always amazes me that when I speak to people about supplements and they order in a multivitamin supplement from nowhere, they don't know where it comes from, just some manufacturer, they don't ask questions, put it in their mouth, swallow it, and say, no problem. Once a capsule goes into your digestive tract, there are so many variables. Intestinal permeability. Is your gut acidic enough? What did you eat? Do you drink? So many variabilities, so many things can go wrong. And, ultimately that supplement probably won't work for 80% of people anyway. Injectable forms, subcutaneous injectable peptides, they actually mitigate most of those issues because it's going straight into your bloodstream. Peptides, and I'll be careful how I say this, the general consensus is peptides don't have side effects. We can. There's probably a caveat there. Be sensible. Don't just inject yourself 10 times more than you're supposed to. The side effects. The common feedback on side effects is irritation at the injectable point. So you get some sort of immune response. So you get like a rash, or you get hot and sweaty. And that generally means it's normally with growth hormone secretagogues, which again we can discuss in a moment. And that's where you might have just taken too much, got a bit hot. And that's it. And after 20 minutes, it passes. So that's So I've digressed a little bit from your question there, but I just wanted to touch on that. Then we talk about the therapeutic effect. Now we are talking about a natural product. Okay, so there's around about 7,000 different peptides in the body. They are formed in nature. They depreciate as we get older. It's the building blocks of life, peptides, and they depreciate as we get older. So we're trying to rejuvenate. So it's a natural process. So the other thing is when you inject something, you expect a very quick reaction, and that, painkiller injection, instant. Peptides is not that. It's just a supplement that you use over time to get a compounded effect to get the best outcome. Now, what I've seen is that some people do get a response very quickly, particularly gut health, actually. It's interesting you say that because, BPC is systematic. I know people that have taken it for shoulder injuries and they said it didn't work. And I said, but I've always had indigestion and now I don't have it anymore. I said, okay, so, the BPC is a body performance complex. It comes from the gut and it's focused on the gut because that's where it felt needed to repair first. And of course, if your gut's working good, then cognitively you're going to be working better. So what you said, I believe is correct. I believe that is how you feel. And then, you need to run the full course. You need to run it for 6 weeks, 12 weeks to really get that ultimate effect. But I've seen people get results in 3 days. I see one person had life-changing results. It took him 3 months on, 3 months off, 3 months on until he got the results. But he was a martial arts instructor, had to give up his career, 5 years. And then he did 2 rounds of these BPC protocols and he was back training again and teaching. And it was life-changing for him.
Wow.
Luckily, he didn't give up on the first cycle.
Wow, that is amazing. Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine. He has a shoulder injury, and he just got off it in like months. And I was like, you should have used this. You probably would have got back to work earlier. But so, like I said, I'm not devil's advocate, but it's new for me, so I have to get through some boundaries as well, because for me the needles were quite scary as well. And now I'm like, I'm in a call with a friend and I'm like, okay, talk, please talk. I'm injecting the needle while you're talking, so just a moment. So it gets way easier and you have to get used to it as well. And but at what point is it symptom treatment?
Well, it depends your reason for taking the peptides in the first place. Is it for health optimization? Is it for longevity? Is it prevention? Or is there a symptom that you're trying to address? Mm-hmm. If there's a symptom you're trying to address, generally there is a guideline in peptides. And this is the other thing where people get a little bit lost, is because they're used to the allopathic medicine protocols. If you and I went to see a doctor, he would give us the same medication for the same issue with 2 completely different people, different size, eat differently, weigh differently. He would still give us the same. With peptides, it can take time to work out what is your ultimate or preferred or optimized dose. I'm taking the growth hormone secretagogue at the moment, and the general consensus for this is that you take it twice a day, 5 days on, 2 days off, similar to the BPC. And sometimes less is more with peptides. And I've really found that with the growth hormone secretagogue that I've been taking for 6 years. And it's only this time I've decided to take less, and actually I feel much better than what I normally do.
Really? So taking less, that is interesting, because you are, at least in this conversation, you are the expert on this. And even an expert has to find their own dosage, cycle. And yeah, is it because it is that new, or how do you experience that?
Biological individuality. It really is. We're talking about nature. We're not talking about a drug. We're talking about a peptide. And in nature, we're all different. And there is a guideline. And look, for the not 10 years, 8 or 9 years I've been doing this. People work on the guideline, and all these great results that you hear about. Most people are working to the same protocol.
Yeah.
But I literally have peptides at my fingertips, so I want to know how to optimize. I want to, I want to try different things. And I have that luxury, if you like, of being able to try different things. And for me, for this instance, it might just be, I just might be in a different time of my life. I might be feeling good anyway, and it just seems to work out this time that taking less has worked much better for me in this instance.
Mm-hmm. And when you experiment, because you take multiple, right? From what I understood from another or not at this moment.
At this moment, so I don't know if you can see this. So I'm taking 5 amino 1MQ. That's for cognitive and for weight management. Not that I need to lose weight, but there's a story behind that. CJC ipamrelin, which is the one I discussed, which is the growth hormone secretagogue. And I'm just trying subcutaneous NAD+. I have a lot of clients that take it. They've done very well with it. So I'm just trying that as a subcutaneous over a 7-day period. So that's the 3 that I'm taking right now, plus bromantane. We can go into any of these in more detail if you like. Plus bromantane, which I take before sort of sport, maybe every other day for the gym. Really, really good nootropic, but also gives you a little boost when you're training. So that's all I'm taking currently.
Sounds good. And what was the last one? How do you take that?
So bromantane or bromantane, that's actually, it's deemed a nootropic. It's in powder form. So you take a small, I don't know if you can see it in the camera. Take a small amount of powder, put it under the tongue, and leave it there till it completely dissolves. Lots of people, get impatient and start trying to swallow it, and you just won't get the sublingual effect. I know people that used to use this for their children in America and Canada with ADHD. They used to give it to them in the morning with their breakfast, and it would really help them focus throughout the day. As a performance enhancer, it was banned, I believe, from the Chinese Olympics, I believe. But as a product, it's fantastic. Again, creates a natural response, good for focus, and I play paddle tennis, just take it a couple of hours before then, it really helps focus, and it just seems to work well for me.
Sounds good. You also have it on your website. I think I missed that one.
It's there. It's definitely there.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll look for it. And when you experiment, when you take multiple of them, how do you know that they will not interfere with each other or just create a counteraction or something?
Yep. So there's no contraindications generally with peptides or the peptides we're talking about, because they're targeting different receptors. The only thing is, if you don't know what you're doing and you take 2 peptides that do exactly the same thing, you're just wasting money, really. So, there's no adverse reactions apart from what I mentioned earlier. So they very rarely become counterproductive, because different peptides are targeting different receptors. And actually the best outcome from peptides is when you stack them. For instance, BPC you're taking now. The best protocol for that is to take it with thymus and beta-4. So the 2 together, they're hitting 2 different receptors, and that's a really well-known Wolverine stack, they call it.
A Wolverine stack, okay. I'll dive into that for my next cycle. How I experience this whole process, I'm like, I think I saw your website first on Instagram, then I saw Jessica, which you know well as well, and then I go. That's always when I find something new, I go full nerd mode. I look for the website, I look for YouTube videos, tutorials, Reddit, everything. But I can imagine that when someone wants to start this, they hear from the benefits and they're like, I want to use this. And then they just start using it. And how would you recommend doing your research when you just found out about peptides?
Yeah. I mean, actually, I find really that these platforms, these groups, like Facebook groups, they're really good. because Reddit I'm not a great fan of. You know, there could be someone on there that's been upset by something, and then suddenly the whole peptide world is, you know what Reddit's like, right? So
Yeah, well,
it's just, but you go on these Facebook groups, there's many of them, the peptide groups, peptide forums, and from there you really start to get some good feedback. Every now and then you have someone pop on and say, oh, I've just bought from this company, they're really great, and then you do some research and they're from that company. But you know, in general, these forums are excellent, and you know, you ask questions. It's still very much under research. You know, you can get them through prescription now as well, but you know, still very much research. I've trained half a dozen doctors in the last year on peptide and peptide therapy. Very open-minded, forward-thinking doctors. Actually, I trained one yesterday right here in Dubai. So, you know, they're advancing their thinking. They're not stuck in their way, and they're seeing where the industry's going. And it's like, okay, well, I want to learn about peptides, and I hear you've been doing it for a while. Tell me what you know. So that's quite that gives me some positivity for the future of peptides.
I can imagine. I was talking to a friend yesterday about peptides, and he was like, "What happens if peptides get normalized and everybody starts using them? We all of a sudden grow." Get 10, 20 years older when we start using peptides for longevity purposes. How is it playing for God when you are using peptides? It feels a bit like touching the buttons of nature. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, yes, I do. Yeah, I've never really thought of it like that. I think. Okay, good question. So I think if I was to really digest your question, we are not living as long as we're supposed to. Okay, so our body, because of the toxins, the EMFs, you know, the food, the soil quality, you know, the lights, everything is working against us, right? I mean, unless we lived on a mountain somewhere in nature, you know, then where we've got this perfect balance of circadian rhythm and we've got no Wi-Fi or anything, then fine, you probably don't need peptides. But we have to supplement. Some people out there say, oh, supplements are, you know, that it's not right. But I disagree. You know, if we was living in the perfect world, then we wouldn't need peptides, but we're not. So how do we combat and mitigate the issues? We do that by taking supplements, and peptides are one of the most natural supplements out there.
Interesting. So what you're basically saying is modern times ask for modern solutions.
That was a much quicker way of saying it, yes.
That's what I do. That's my job. We all have our purpose in this conversation. So what I find interesting is the cycling aspect. What is the purpose of cycling with BPC 157, for example? Is it something with the sensitivity of? That's it.
Yeah, I have two bits of information here. Number one is that you should cycle peptides anyway. It's not that you could saturate a receptor if you was really silly and just kept doing it for years and years with no break, but you know, very unlikely with these sensible protocols. But yeah, desensitization just means, you know, next time you're going to need to do more. It's going to cost more money. And with peptide bioregulators particularly, but I'd say peptides in general, we call it pulsing. So our bodies work better. Our bodies are pulsing all the time, right? And that's how we believe peptides work better. Come on, come off, come on, come off, and it's called the pulsing effect, and that's proven to be the most beneficial way. Yeah.
All right. And when you use them for like, I will use 2 vials, like we discussed. Can you like when I take a supplement, for example, when my B12, I'm low in B12, I supplement B12. And I can test blood markers to see if I'm on the right track. Is there also something for peptides? Can you?
Not really.
No?
No. I mean, BPC specifically, not what I know of. I mean, you know, you're testing your. I mean, you might have an organic acid test in your stomach. You might have microbiome testing. Of course, you know, you can take BPC for 3 months and then test your microbiome after. But you know, you get hormone secretagogues, which I've discussed now. You can test your growth hormone levels before and after. But, you know, if you're taking a peptide for injury repair, there's no before and after test apart from you. You know, you tell me. Nootropic test, generally, you know, biohackers when they're taking nootropics, it's because they want to perform better, think straighter. Best feedback for that is individual. So I'm not saying that there 100% isn't. Of course, there is, depending on the peptide category. But generally, it's about performance, whether that's cognitive or physical or, recovery. So, there's no blood test or no better blood test than you, than yourself.
Yeah, no, most definitely the subjective effect is most likely the best test in this case. I can imagine there's some critique on peptides. How do you know on long term the effects?
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who says like they're not tested long term?
Well, the easy answer is they are. So they've been around since the 1980s, 1984. The bioregulators, many test cases through tens of thousands of people. Compound pharmacies in the US have been through the rigmarole because they've researched peptides. They've been tested more than FDA products. Some FDA products are not tested, as we know. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole. But these have been tested because people are. The health industry, if we call it that, the allopathic industry, they're trying to find problems with it. They've been trying to find problems with peptides for a long time, and believe me, if there was a problem, they would be completely banned. In fact, they were put on the FDA put some of the peptides on the dangerous list.
So it's not forbidden, but it's like a warning.
Yes. So, which is really interesting. So, how does a product go onto the FDA dangerous list? Do you have any idea?
No, probably danger for the business.
So, I've researched this as much as I can. There is no specific reason why anything goes on the danger list. It's either banned or it's not banned. If it's banned, it's because it's created adverse reactions and it's dangerous for you. The danger list, nobody knows. But what we do know is that peptides have been tested, and especially at compound pharmacy level, there is no side effects apart from what we mentioned previously. So why have some of the peptides gone on the danger list? Nobody knows why.
Wow, that's so interesting. I mean, I'm totally with you on some agendas, but let's not dive into that topic for this podcast. But I cannot think of a logical reason why there is a subcategory like danger list, but it's not forbidden, because if they thought it was unhealthy, the FDA is the first one to forbid it, right?
There's a logical brain here. It's like people see danger. Oh, that creates the back office. It's danger, but actually, you just perfectly articulated. Why is it not banned or forbidden? And it's on a danger list. If it's that bad, you forbid it. You ban it. If it's on a danger list with no side effects or adverse reactions, when you look deeper, then we will not go down that conspiracy vortex today.
Let's save that for another podcast. Okay, wow, that is indeed fascinating. Well, what do you expect for like the next? What is a good time span? 10, 15, 50 years? How do you expect the development of the realm of peptides?
Yeah, I think it's the realm of health and wellness. Sick care versus healthcare. I think this division is going to become more apparent over time. We have sick care and we're going to have healthcare, and peptides, stem cells. All the things that help with prevention and real longevity. I think it's going to move into a healthcare sector, and the sick care sector can continue what they're doing, advertising on TV, getting people to take these drugs that they need to take another drug to mitigate the side effects of that, and so on and so on, eating the crap food to get themselves sick and keep going. That's the sick care side. And then we've got the health optimization side. And for a long time, people, I think when I first got into peptides, said the next 10 years, peptides are going to be things of the future. I'm still saying it. And for whatever reason, they haven't quite made it yet on the allopathic side, but it has to come because it's just so well proven. I guess if we look at what the FDA have done with some of the peptides, I think BPC is just crazy. No one's had a side effect from what I'm aware of, and people that speak about this at the compound pharmacies have ever had a side effect put on the danger list. So that tells you that for it to be on that list, there must be something really good about it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
how
Like I said, it's a danger for them. Because,
it's hard not to be dragged down that road. So I'm really trying not to. But I just don't know how. I think the world is a lot wiser now. I think since the pandemic, and people have chosen, actually whether it's conspiracy, not conspiracy, whatever. But I do have to look after myself, and actually, the sick care profession don't know everything. Doctors don't know everything, and nor should they be expected to know everything. And I think it was ingrained that you get ill, you go to the doctor. The doctor knows everything. There's only so much you can learn in 5 years. I mean, I studied my therapeutic nutrition and functional medicine. That took me 5 years in total. So much I don't know, and there's so much they don't know. So I think taking you responsible for your own health and researching is key. And research 9 times out of 10 will ultimately take you to peptides anyway.
Yeah, very interesting. And when like you said, like 7,000, was that the number you said? That were like 7,000?
Guesstimate, yeah.
Yeah. What are some categories you can place the peptides in? Like you said, longevity, you said, it's like performance enhancement. Is that what you said? Some form of treatment. What kind of categories could you sum up when it comes to peptides? Maybe name like 5 or something.
Okay. Weight loss, muscle, performance, hormones, nootropics, injury repair. That's 6.
Yeah. So many.
Longevity, 7.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you talk about longevity, what do you think about that? Do you think about longevity that you want to extend your lifespan or health span?
The latter, for me, is health span, and I've never used this terminology before, but performance span. So, I want to be able to think clearly for as long as possible. We know now with all the neurological diseases, it's rife. So, a lot of these peptides were formed, especially the Russian dry peptides, were created to help with neurological diseases. I take these peptides, most of them are intranasal, by the way. I take these peptides as a preventative. And actually, sometimes the side effect is that you're more focused that day, but that wasn't the reason why I took it. It gave me a dopamine kick, and I'm like, wow, I can work well today. I'm focused today, but it was always for long term. So, I love sport. I managed to do the sports that I do around injuries, and I don't want to stop. The day that I have to stop doing exercise is the day that I'd say, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There's a big gym guy here in the Netherlands, and he just started the gym for like his parents, but for the people in the same age, like 70, 80, and they're doing deadlifts, like 70, 80 years old doing deadlifts. I think that should be the norm, the standard for not like, of course, not per se the heaviest weights, but doing the deadlift so that you can pick up your shoes from the floor without stuff like that. So I really like that. And I think, and then we can go back to biohacking, and I thought that it is more like a curiosity, but it is also, I said that on the meetup as well, is that you expect more from life. This just not going through daily life and feeling okay. You can expect more. Expect top performance from yourself and feeling great instead of all right. And I think peptides can definitely contribute to that. When it comes to general health, like what did you, the X-Men combination? What was the X-Men combination?
The Wolverine.
Oh, the Wolverine, yeah, Wolverine.
The Wolverine stack, BPC and thymosin beta 4.
Times and beta. Okay, interesting.
It's basically the repair stack. You get injured, you repair quickly if you combine those two peptides together. That's the consent.
Yeah, the Wolverine sounds a bit scary for people, but
depends. If you like X-Men and Marvel, it's great.
I would sign up today.
but for the mainstay, yeah, it's just accelerated recovery and repair.
Is there some sort of standard that you have to take them in the morning or in the evening, or both, or does it depend on the peptide?
Depends on the peptide. For that particular protocol, the norm would be BPC morning and evening, as I think you know, 5 days on, 2 days off. And for the thymosin beta 4, it doesn't really matter what time of day you take it, but you take the norm is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, take 2 days off. So the 2 days you take off with the BPC, take off with the thymosin, and then you go again. The half-life is slightly longer. With BPC, obviously, it's very short. That's why you have to take it twice a day.
Yeah. Okay. And what are some peptides you would recommend for in general? Is there some sort of just like in vitamins, vitamin C with D3, K2? Is that also the case with peptides? There's something you can always take for preventative matters, or what would you recommend for that? The base stack.
Sure. So thymosin alpha 1, which is also from the thymus, same as thymosin beta 4, but this focuses on the immune system. That was actually approved by the FDA, I think, during COVID, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it was. I'll need to double check that, but I'm sure when I read back that was approved at some point by the FDA, and that's amazing for the immune system. So, taking that 2 to 3 times a year, that's overall immunity health. BPC, if you do any sort of exercise, which hopefully most people do, taking BPC 2 to 4 times a year is definitely another one that I would focus on. And the growth hormone secretagogues, I mentioned it a few times. Growth hormone stimulation, this is anti-aging, it's your growth hormone. This is what's going to help you sleep better. It's going to give you more energy, help you build muscle, help you burn fat. So, that they are the growth hormone secretagogue is definitely my go-to. That's the particular one I showed you a moment ago. That's a blend of CJC and ipamorelin. The reason why it's blended is that there's 2 different categories of secretagogues in this instance, which is a GHRH, which is growth hormone releasing hormone. And then there's a GHRP, which is growth hormone releasing peptide. Best way to visualize those peptides, even though this is definitely not the case, is that a growth hormone releasing hormone would fill your peptide tank if there was such a thing. Your hormone tank if there was such a thing. There is not. Anybody says this, don't speak ridiculous. Just the way to visualize it. So, growth hormone releasing hormone will fill your peptide tank, and the growth hormone releasing peptide will release it. So, some people do better with GHRHs, some people do better with GHRPs. GHRH is CJC 1295 and tesamorelin, and the GHRP is the ipamorelin. They're the 3 that we offer. I like the blend just because it's easy. You don't have to worry about doing, blending 2 different peptides. They're blended together. And I just take that in the morning. Some people like to take it you should take morning and evening because you're filling your growth hormone tank when you go to sleep. And then obviously, it releases, that's when you mimic your growth hormone. But rarely, but it does happen, I find it can disrupt some people's sleep. So, with that instance, you need to just listen to your body and then maybe just take it in the morning and do your second shot late afternoon rather than evening before bed like many advocate.
Okay, so that is interesting to take. Are there some big don'ts you have to think of when it comes to BPC, or when it comes to peptides in general?
Okay, I'm thinking on my feet here. Number one is don't expect too much, right? So, this is not a miracle cure. Just because it's injection, as we said at the beginning, it doesn't mean you get instant results. People say, I don't feel anything. Well, what did you expect to feel? So it's therapeutic. It takes time. So don't expect quick results is number one. Don't think taking more is better. There's a big mistake I have with some VIP clients where they say, well, you know, I can afford to take as many peptides as you can possibly sell me. I want more. And I say, more's not going to be any better for you. Don't waste your time or money. And if you are going to get an adverse reaction, it's by doing that, right? So don't do that. Yeah, I think there's some misunderstanding with some of the oral peptides. I'm not talking about the bioregulators. I'm talking about a lot of people because it's easier to sell capsules online than it is injectables. Most of these peptides do not break through the gut. They do not break through the endothelium. So it's just, that literally is just expensive, waste of time. I would say, just as a caveat to that, BPC does work because it doesn't need to. It's fixing your gut. So if you're taking a peptide for gut health, it makes sense. If you're taking it as a growth hormone secretagogue to build muscle, then it doesn't make sense to do it orally. Just do the injection. Actually, at this point, I just want to show you what a lot of people do. The needle they use is too big. It's unnecessary. So I use a 1 ml syringe for my my reconstituting, but for actual peptide, I don't know if you can see how tiny this needle is. Can you see?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So it's only it's only 0.5 ml syringe, and the needle is tiny. You know, it's like it's shorter than the depth of my thumb, and that's all you need. It just about breaks the skin, and it's absolutely perfect.
Yeah, because there was something in my head like, what if I stick it in too deep, and then I ordered the needle, and I was like, I won't even be able to stick it in too deep because it's so short. Okay, so very clear about the don'ts when it comes to peptides. Are there any emerging peptides that you are looking at but you're not quite using yet?
PNC27 for cancer. I'm hearing some really good things on that. There's another peptide, which is very unlike me because my only skill set I have is remembering peptide names. I've just forgotten this one, so I can't believe I've forgotten one. But there's one for Parkinson's, which I'm hearing really good things about.
Like reversing or preventative?
Reversing. So and I've had some anecdotal case studies emailed to me, so that's really interesting. Mixing certain peptides with stem cells, also AOD 9064 to help with the regeneration into that's using ultrasound into different joints, and there's some really good advanced people out there, medical professionals that are using ultrasound and BPC, for instance. And they're going into the joints and they're getting the most amazing outcomes. And they're doing that mainly in the US, also in Mexico and Panama. These guys are doing it. I don't know if they're doing it under the radar or whatever. I'm not sure what the rules are out in the US anymore, but there's plenty of people out there using these peptides for many different reasons.
All right. And because you're based in Dubai, right?
I'm based between Ibiza and Dubai.
Oh, okay. But is there, I can imagine technology and everything is emerging so quickly, so fast over there as well. Is there a lot of knowledge about peptides over there as well?
It's getting better. They do actually have a compound pharmacy here now that are compounding peptides, and you can get peptides on prescription in Dubai.
Really?
Yep. So there's a few anti-aging clinics that offer it. So that the knowledge is good. The knowledge is getting better. Again, it's really refreshing that a few doctors, probably 4 now I can think of here, that have approached me and asked me what protocols they should be doing, because they've been given the protocol by the compound pharmacy, but they've approached me to see if those protocols are correct or what I found has worked better. So that's been some really nice conversations to have. So yes, it's definitely happening. Yeah.
Wow. Sounds very, very good, very promising. I'll be definitely looking at the developments of the peptide world and, of course, what you are doing. What is the next 10 years for you, Holden?
What's the next what? Sorry, I missed that.
The next 10 years for you, how do you look at the outlook of your company, of your life? What is the next 10 years for you?
I think ultimately I would like to I do have the support to do this. It's just that the timing isn't quite there just yet. I would like to have my own compound, creating the peptide bioregulators and the research peptides. I would like to, think that I could establish that with my partners over the next 3 to 5 years, and then have this business and make sure we continue to access but create the best peptides in the world. And then hopefully, at that point, because it is happening in Dubai, and hopefully it will continue across the world, where we can start working with doctors and clinics, and not just half a dozen doctors I'm working with. I want to be working with hundreds, that are really open to it. And there's some real, I don't know if regulation is the correct word, but there is a real structure to it where doctors and people that want to optimize health have got this open to them, and they can access it easily. I think that's where I'd like to be.
Sounds very good. I really hope that it will come true, that you will make it happen, that you will have more and more impact by the years, and I will continue to follow you. Where can people find you and, of course, your company?
Yeah, so we've got at dnlabresearch on Instagram. We've also got at UAE Peptides, and then I'm at Dean E. Henry.
Sounds good. So much for your time, Henry. Dean Henry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So I bet people call me Henry all the time as well. I don't mind. I've been called a lot worse. But no, thank you for having me, Yorick. It's really good to chat to you.
Likewise.
Thanks.